We are back at Insomnia Dublin Gaming Festival 2019, and I have the legend himself once again on the Republic of Players podcast,
I'm not shaking.
Mr. John Romero.
All right, hey, how's it going?
So, John, the last time we talked to you, we talked about kind of games that you're working on, and Doom and Quake. But
I think he's been more active since
yeah,
then.
I want to
He's
talk.
been making games constantly, yeah.
I want to talk to you about that new game coming out,
Empire of Sin.
Empire of Sin. How is that going?
Great, yeah. We've been working on it for like 2.5 years, and we have like 25 people working on it in Galway.
Yeah.
In our office. We have an office that has like 3 floors on it.
Yeah.
It's super busy.
Yeah.
Every day is just like so much going on. So it's never a quiet day at the office.
Do you love being working under pressure? I think does it suit
It's not
you?
really under pressure. It's just doing it right. Making sure that we have the right design and it's all working correctly because it's a huge. It's a huge game. It has a ton of mechanics and
I've been checking it out an awful lot. Like I've been following it as through development, and it's a game that I'm actually hugely interested in because I love that strategy style game.
And gangsters in the 20s.
And gangsters in the 20s.
There aren't many games like that.
Who doesn't want to do that?
So anyone that doesn't know what it's about, tell the good folks what that game is about.
It is a 1920s Prohibition era gangster game that takes place in Chicago. And you play one of 14 bosses. Al Capone. There's probably half the people are real.
Yeah.
Joe Saltis and stuff. And then the other ones that we've created.
Brilliant.
That were some people were from New York, some were from Mexico. They were doing the stuff that they did, but we bring them all to Chicago and put them in there.
Irish are in there?
Yeah. And and so it's what we call a system soup because it has so many gameplay systems interacting in it together that it's really complex. And so it's a lot of testing to make sure that these things work right with each other, like having relationships and enemies and people that you're in love with and how those things all interact with each other. People who are drunk and then you get into combat and like they can't really shoot well or whatever.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on in it, but there's a lot of really cool stuff. The combat it's like XCOM 2.
And obviously that, like with all the stuff going on in the background, that creates a lot of difficulty in terms of programming. How are you finding developing this game, a strategy game, compared to obviously a first-person shooter?
Well, it's more complex in that system part because shooters don't have all the management. It's like a management sim kind of thing. There's none of that is in a shooter, but in a shooter you have a ton of movement code and a ton of action code basically for how things interact with each other, and you don't have that in a management game like this, like a strategy game. So this is way more. It's way more like when you have a grid for combat, you know that you can move to these points. But if you're in a shooter, you can just like run into anything and do crazy moves, and you got to be like you're programming completely different for that kind of movement to handle anything that people are going to do. Versus, well, we're only allowing you to do these things, but this is a very strategic grid that you're on, and your distance and your weapon type and your cover type in who you want to attack, you need a percentage chance to hit and all that kind of stuff. Like those things.
Did you come up with this idea for this game yourself?
No, this is my wife Brenda's idea. This is her game.
Yeah, this is her baby.
Yeah, so she's wanted to make it for 20 years. She's been fascinated with Chicago and
gangsters.
And gangsters. Mostly the Prohibition era.
There's just a lot of films and everyone focused on that very era because it's very exciting stuff to be watching.
And there's a lot of gangsters.
They say 1920s gangsters. Prohibition was the culprit for it all, and it's brilliant. Sounds very exciting. To play.
Just out of curiosity on it, how did you decide on the gameplay being a strategic game? Like, is there much, like, what sort of thought process goes into choosing what sort of
when she was coming up with the idea for the game, she's thinking about what kind of game she wants to play. And then when you think about the kind of game you want to play, you start thinking about other games that have similar systems that you want. Like, so it's easier to explain to a publisher what you're talking about. So if you say it's like Civilization, Revolution, or it's like Civilization 6 with XCOM combat and Jagged Alliance characters You know, so when you kind of talk about it in terms like that, it makes it easier for people to understand.
Yeah.
And that's also the design influence. So you kind of use that as a beginning point for the design. It's like we want people like Jagged Alliance, and then you start going you start fleshing out what characters would be based on the way that Jagged Alliance characters are, and then you start getting more advanced than that, and you start to incorporate other things like, but they need to have traits, and they need to have these other things. It's like Crusader Kings traits and stuff, so it's going to have a lot of depth. But it's like the Jagged Alliance attitude and personalities and stuff. So that's how we kind of
Awesome.
develop, and you kind
definitely.
of add more depth to it. And so all the parts of the game that are like that, they all kind of started with a specific vision and then went beyond that because we're trying to make something new, you know.
What sort of involvement do I hope I'm getting this right? Paradox. So are they publishing the game?
They're the publisher, yeah. So they own the IP. They are. We're doing all the development.
Yeah.
They're doing all of the marketing and publishing on it. They're paying for it.
Yeah.
They're working with us on the scheduling and how
it's a pretty fresh partnership. You've been only a year ago or something. You joined with them, isn't it?
It was 2.5 years ago.
It's so quick. Time was going so quick. It feels like we were talking about it, and the next thing is 2.5 years.
And they're masters of the strategy genre.
They're amazing.
Was there much kind of back and forth with?
Yeah. There's still a lot. I mean, it's all the time. Like, we're working with people who are experts in that kind of game to make sure that this is a Paradox game.
Yeah, that's
so it has to have that depth in it.
Yeah.
We have to support the nerd pillar, which means that there has to be a lot of information in the game that people will want to pull out that is cool, but not so it's not the core of the game that's relevant to the setting of the game.
So there's a story there to.
There's a ton of stories.
Unravel.
There's tons of stories. Yeah. So
side missions and
like if you remember pretend you're playing Age of Empires if you know how to play the game, right? Yeah. It's like there isn't a story to Age of Empires.
No, you're making the story as you go.
Yeah, you're making the stories you play. But so in our game it's the same thing. You like. How many bosses do you want to fight against?
Yeah.
How many neighborhoods do you want to be in? Like how big do you want the game to be for this session? And as you play it, you are encountering stories.
Yes,
so you talk to an RP, you talk to a gangster, and that gangster may not be interested in talking to you because you haven't been introduced to them yet, and you're below them or something.
And can you recruit people into your gang?
Like you can if they want to be recruited.
Okay.
And if they don't, you got to figure out how to recruit them.
Yeah.
Like who do you need an intro from?
Do some dirty job for them.
You might have to do a mission for them.
It kind of reminds me of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Remember that you had to go around to all the neighborhoods and you had to take them out, and that was a great part of that game, which was very exciting. It's like the 1920s settings as well. It's
fantastic
that setting's really good. Yeah.
That game has been developed in this country. I'm 100% on board with that game. Like since day one. Like I remember what was funny is the last time you were on the show, you wouldn't tell us what the name of the game was.
Yeah, because we couldn't. There was only a code name at that time.
And I remember when it popped, I was like, that was the game that John is talking about. So it's amazing to see kind of the start for me anyway, as someone who's interested in the industry, to talk to you about the start.
You know
of
what's
that.
happening.
And then the whole way through.
You don't know what the name is. We didn't know what the name was.
Yeah.
We had a code name.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where
can you reveal that code name?
We needed I think it's called Renegade.
Okay.
That's
and
cool.
So we needed at some point to name the game because we're going to be doing an E3 reveal. Yes. And then we're going to be doing a Gamescom demo, and then we're going to be doing a PDXCon gameplay. So we had to like come up with it. So we went back and forth with Paradox. They had tons of people in there contributing names. We contributed names. Brenda's name is Empire of Sin.
Brilliant.
That's the one she wanted. And then everybody works together to figure out the best name. And then when we came down to a small list, then Paradox flies over to Galway.
Yeah.
We have a huge meeting where we have a big matrix on the wall of the names that are alive still. And then what are the points that it needs to hit to be a really great name? And Empire of Sin checked all the boxes.
We still have to go in for that cup of tea and check out Romero Games.
Yeah.
How has been in Ireland? Like from the last time we talked, you were here a couple of years. Are you still settled here? You're happy out?
Yeah. So for the first 3 years, we didn't even have a car.
Yeah.
We sold everything in the U.S. and when we got here, we're like, we need to just like rent cars and kind of.
In case you want to go home, is it?
No. We just need to rent cars before we figure out what kind of car do we want to buy.
Yeah. True.
We can rent cars and see if do we like an SUV-sized car in this country, drive down the street? Nope. Too big. So it's like
parking anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have a massive Hummer here.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's giant. It's a military H1.
Sweet.
I'm gonna sell it because it's too big.
Cars off the street.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be cool over here, but it's way too big for everything.
I watched your interview with Danny O'Dwyer.
Oh yeah.
No Clip. Yeah, it was amazing, and I loved the story where you talked about kind of how you started, and what I loved about your story is it didn't just happen overnight. It was. I mean, it was 10 years kind of going through high school, and then it...
Oh, do you mean making games?
Yeah, as in like...
that was my whole life pretty much, so it started, if I make it really short, for when I was 11, how did you start making games? At 11, I went to a college, and I taught myself in the college how to program.
Wow.
So that's what happened.
So while you were studying, you were doing that on the side?
I was going to school, but during the summertime, there's no school, except the college still happens in the summer for some people.
Okay.
And so I went to the computer science lab at the local college, and there were not that many people there because it's summertime, but there were still students there, and those students are doing homework because they're taking classes during the summer. And I saw that they were programming. And so I started asking them, what is it that you're writing on the screen? They're like, it's basic programming.
Yeah.
And they started telling me what they were writing, and I was writing it down. And I got to a point where I could finally get a book on basic programming. It was HP Basic. And then get on my own terminal and then start experimenting with it, start making games and stuff. And I just did that on my own because I wanted to.
And that's what I found fascinating.
Nobody had computers at home at that time.
No,
so
it was kind of
you had to do it at school.
At college because even the school didn't have it.
It was fascinating for me because it showed, and I think it's a good message to any young person out there that wants to make it. It doesn't happen overnight, and I think you're the embodiment of that. That you worked your ass off to get here, and I mean, you're doing fantastic things. I'm so happy that you're in Ireland doing what you're doing because this game that comes out, I hope it's a massive success.
I was actually reading stuff during the week, and there was rumours that they might be making another FPS game.
Can't say anything about it.
Is there a code then?
We don't know what.
There's a real name. I can't say anything about it.
Yeah, so I think he just said he's making it though.
Scoop.
Yeah. We have to try and get them.
Just out of curiosity, on the game development scene, what do you think of the game development scene on Ireland?
It's great. There are so many developers here, and this is let's talk about Northern Ireland as well. We just went to a meetup a few days ago, and there were 200 indie developers at this meeting. It was a Northern Ireland game dev meetup. And we met at this really cool, it's called a Geek Easy.
Yeah. Nice
like
name.
a barcade. Yeah. Nice. And it's great. It's full of arcade games and pinball machines and 2 levels of bars and restaurants and stuff. It's a really big place called Cuckoo's up in Belfast. And we went there and got to talk to everybody about our time in the game industry,
I think it's great that you take the time out of your very busy schedule to do things like that. It gives a lot of people a boost to see people like yourselves and to talk to them and give them, I don't know, just let them know that it's keep trying and do what you're doing.
Anything that people need to know, they ask us any question. Yeah. We can talk about anything. We've done everything. I can talk about everything in game dev except for animating a model, animating a 3D model. Advanced creation of a 3D model, but almost everything else I've done everything else.
It's amazing.
Production, sound, programming, level design, everything.
It's kind of an obsession, isn't it? Really, you love it so much.
If you keep on making stuff, at some point you're going to learn more stuff.
Yeah. It branches off.
Another interesting thing I found out about you was the changeover.
Wrap it up soon.
Yeah, we can wrap it up.
Okay.
John Romero, when is the game going to be released?
Next year.
You don't have a date?
Don't have a date.
Okay.
We don't have a date because we want to make it great.
And can we
don't want to rush it out the door.
Make sure you check out that game. Everyone go and buy it and support this amazing person. John Romero, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Having you on once again.
Thanks very much.
Can we get a quick picture with you?